here, please. Item number 6 is for discussion purposes only. There will be no vote on this tonight. Discussion on request to amend future land use map in the comprehensive land use plan update of 2012 for 11,500 Kingston Pike, 68.31 acres for mixed-use town center, medium-density residential, low-density residential, and open space to commercial, parks and recreation, low-density residential, and low-density residential. John Briam, Hy-Vee applicant. And again, this is for discussion purposes only tonight.
And obviously these two items are related. The first item deals with the future land use map. The second one will deal with the zoning map. And hopefully we've had a lot of education about both on the previous item. Talk a whole lot about that. I can show that this property is currently the future land use. Now, this is in the mixed-use town center land use area. And this area, the future land use map, has a little more teeth to it because the Board of Mayor and Aldermen actually adopted this part of our plan and our map. So the property, everybody's probably familiar with it. Just to the west of the town hall, east of Glen Abbey and Coles. The purple is medium density, not medium density resident, but mixed use town center. About 2/3 of the property is currently shown as medium density residential. The remaining third is kind of split between low density residential and medium density residential, and then there's a sliver of open space in that area as well. The applicant is requesting a future land use map amendment that would get rid of the mixed use town center, and the northernmost roughly 21 acres would be a commercial land use. To the south of that, there's about a 7-acre Parks and Rec area land use. South of that, you've got about 15 acres of low-density residential. That's 3 to 6 units per acre, and then very low density south of that, which is 2 to 4 units per acre. Basically the future land use map, it would have to be amended for them to achieve the development that they would like to have here, and in order to rezone it to the development that they would like to have on this property. Basically this change would remove the development requirements in our zoning ordinance, which is where the requirements are, that are associated with properties or portions of properties that are mapped that mixed-use town center. And those requirements are in place to try to incrementally provide for a plan of development that kind of emulates concepts of a traditional town center. More specifically, some of the specific things in there include limitations on the building size. The building sizes are limited to 25,000 square feet. Fuel centers are not permitted. So basically what the intent is to try to create a smaller footprint, more pedestrian scale plan of development with, it again kind of emulates a traditional downtown. Make it very walkable, create, community gathering spaces. And really all this kind of goes back to the town's history. One of the reasons that the town was founded in 1980 was to try to have more control over how it grows. And we've been very active in land use planning throughout our history. We've had a couple of plans that were developed, the Farragut 2000 and Farragut 2004 plan. And then we engaged the community and developed a much more comprehensive plan called the Farragut Land Use and Transportation Policy Plan. That was a 10-year plan that was adopted by both the Planning Commission and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen in 2001. And the policies within that plan helped guide regulatory decisions that were made subsequently to our zoning, our subdivision regulations, how we invest through our capital investment plan. One of the policies in that plan was the following. The town should promote the Kingston Pike corridor between Glen Abbey Boulevard and Concord Road, including Village Green Commercial Complex as the town center area to serve as a community focal point. So this policy statement really reflected kind of a long-term community desire that's really been expressed in all of these outreach documents for a kind of a core, a heart of the town, a downtown area, because we were founded really without that, obviously, just because of our age, and really we're just kind of a collection of shopping centers and subdivisions without that real downtown identity. So with that policy statement, policy document in place in 2001, we actually created the Town Center Zoning District in 2007, along with design requirements associated with that. And then later in 2007, about 27 acres of this property in question, the northernmost, was recommended by the Planning Commission for rezoning to Town Center District. As required in that zoning district, the applicant had to present a concept plan, and that plan did show a mixed-use development that would be, at that time, the first step toward helping bring this downtown concept to reality. Unfortunately, that was also the time when the national economy kind of tanked, and so that project didn't get off the ground. So when the policy plan was due for an update in 2011, we again engaged the community. We hired an outside consultant from Colorado to help the town again evaluate what the vision would be for the whole town. And one of the strategies, and probably the most important strategy that they identified, was bring about a downtown. Again, this kind of follows a trend throughout the town's history. And as we've looked at earlier, and I talked a little bit about the first time we ever mapped that was in 2012. And a lot of the properties consistent with that policy statement from the previous plan, from Glen Abbey all the way to Concord Road, a lot of those properties along Kingston Pike were shown as mixed-use town center. So there wasn't any one property that was envisioned for the town center. It was kind of frankly, from the staff's perspective, for it to be a really recognizable space that really differentiates itself from its surroundings, it needs to be more than one property. And right now, we've got some things in play that are working toward, again, bringing that to fruition. So with the updated plan in 2015, we started working more on trying to actively address that strategy in our plan update. And one of the things that we did was to adopt some modifications to our zoning districts to require certain things for land that is within the mixed-use town center land use area. And that's also when the Board of Mayor and Aldermen adopted that that map and the text associated with that aspect of our plan update. So there's a long history to what's kind of before you tonight. And again, the result of what we did in 2015, in my opinion, has been very substantial in this part of the town. You can see the change right up here at the intersection. When we made those changes to the zoning ordinance, we had an abandoned Silver Spoon restaurant, we had an abandoned gas station. There was an old historic building on the other quadrant. The two abandoned buildings have been redeveloped for the size of the tract, a kind of different look and feel. The buildings are brought up to the street, so you have a higher quality, higher percentage of masonry. Small footprint buildings that create kind of an activity area, kind of as pedestrian friendly as you can be at the intersection of two major arterials. But again, that coupled with revamping the Campbell Station Inn, creating the Ralph McGill Plaza for outdoor gathering spaces, all that really has created a lot of energy, along with further east, the town center at Biddle Farms project that's underway. And that, all those things collectively really we're starting to this area really is kind of being known as downtown Farragut. So the property located to the west of the town hall is really the largest undeveloped area that has the mixed-use town center land use in it. If the map is changed and the zoning map is amended, what the applicant would like to do is construct a big box grocery store, approximately 156,000 square feet, with a fuel center and some smaller retail buildings up near Kingston Pike. And obviously that would be the direct opposite of what I talked about earlier with some of the development requirements that we have in our commercial zoned areas for areas that have that mixed-use town center. So the effect of that change to the future land use map and then subsequently potentially the zoning map would be substantial and really does need, in my opinion, to have significant community input. So that's kind of an overview of what is being requested. I will say that they will talk about a concept plan, and it's nice to have an idea of what people's what they would like to do with a piece of property. But as I say this all the time when we look at these things, I wouldn't get too hung up on a concept plan or a property owner, because both of those can change. So as we'll talk about with the next item, with zoning map amendment, you really need to think about whether the zoning districts that they're requesting in the areas that they're looking at are representative of the context and our plan. And they're requesting to change the plan here in order to accommodate that. So these are all things that from a staff's perspective, obviously need very serious consideration. They do have some slides and I think a presentation. The applicant's here if you want to them to go through that to give you an overview of what they have in mind. We do have some people, obviously, that have signed up as well to speak on this item.
Good evening, Phil Hoy, Group Vice President of Real Estate and Acquisitions with Hy-Vee. I want to just touch on briefly, I guess, who Hy-Vee is, why here, why now, this location, and then I've got John Brem with me.
Hey, Phil, we do need an address for the record, if you don't mind.
Sure, 22457 Elthon Place, Swan, Iowa. Sorry
Make
about
sure your
that.
mic is on.
Green light's on. I'll just
Okay.
stand closer to it. Okay. I've got John Bram with me. Ben Mullins also, and Houston and Wesley from Cannon and Cannon are also here as part of our group. So hopefully between the 5 of us, we can answer any questions you might have this evening. Real briefly, without belaboring who we are, I think it's probably helpful that I build some basis of who's before you and who's presenting this concept plan. So Hy-Vee is a grocer, but more than just a grocer, we're a retailer. What makes us different from other retailers, I'll say retailer instead of grocer. I think that's an important distinction because we don't just sell groceries. We do much more than that. The things that make us unique or different, I would say primarily we're employee owned. How we treat our employees makes us unique. We offer 10% employee discounts within our stores, 20% for our company-owned restaurants. We give back bonuses to every level employee within our store. So that ownership piece extends to the store's performance, and we give back whether you're a part-time employee or a full-time employee. Flexible hours, some 4-day work weeks. Our partnerships that we have make us unique, whether those are collegiate partnerships, vendor partnerships, but even local partnerships. Like Lulu's Hot Sauce, now a national brand. They got their start in Hy-Vee, going into one store in West Des Moines, Iowa, going to the store director, talking to him, getting their product inside the store. That makes us unique as a retailer. A lot of national big box retailers don't let local vendors come in and sell their goods and get their start. But that's something that we do. It's a very important program that we have throughout our entire company. Service makes us unique. We're a full-service retailer, whether that's our full-service meat department, pharmacy. We have dietitians within our stores. We are a full-service operator. Our full-service food offerings also make us unique. Value with our deals that we have is also unique to be a full-service retailer, but then also focus on value. And then experience. So we do have a fast and fresh, which is our convenience store concept as part of this. That is also service. How we offer our Fuel Saver program, which is especially popular here recently, as you can imagine, is part of our value offering to our customer. Our prepared meals, our safe environment, our knowledgeable staff, that's all part of the experience that we offer. I could talk for a long time about what makes us unique. I could present pictures and slides and videos, but I don't know if that's exactly what we're here for tonight, but I want to just at least speak to that because you might hear people say, we don't need another grocery store. We are not another grocery store. And I can spend as much time as you like on that, if that's helpful. There's some concern about the why now. Do we need another grocery store, or do we need another big box operator? We just had Kroger rebuild down the road, and I understand that. I understand that concern, and I hear it frequently. If you come in, then all of our other stores we're going to close down. But what we actually see happen when more competition comes in is that as John likes to say, iron sharpens iron. And what we see in communities where we have another operator across the street is they up their game. They actually invest in their store. They invest in their people. They remodel. So you might even have an operator come in and say, if this store opens, we're going to close. And it hasn't been the case. I've not seen that in my years with Hy-Vee. I've heard a lot of it, but I have not seen a lot of it. Competition helps. 94% of residents right now, of customers right now, say that they're not happy with the prices. And competition helps those things. I want to touch just briefly, and then I'm going to hand it over to John to go through these slides, but there's concern about this just being a concept plan, and what I want to say to that is we spent considerable amount of time designing the commercial part of this because that's the part that concerns us the most is our operation, obviously. But we spent even more time than that on the portion behind our food store. That's what we spent the most amount of time with. So it's not just lines on paper that we put on there flippantly. We started with lines on paper. We changed it again, met with neighbors, changed it again, got more feedback, and changed it again. So what you see is a thought-out concept plan that has community feedback in it, and it has changed. And although it is a concept plan, I would have to believe there's a way to go through your process as a city to make it more than just a concept plan. To be that if the zoning changes that and plats are approved, that land can be dedicated, green space can be platted, roads can be dedicated, zoning can be put in place, and certain design guidelines can be adopted for those different zoning elements. So I believe that concern could be alleviated through the approval process with the town. With that, I'll hand it over to John. He'll go through the slides. He'll talk a little bit more about the concept plan and what's being proposed.
Good evening. My name is John Brem. I'm Director of Site Planning with Hy-Vee, 5820 Westtown Parkway, West Des Moines, Iowa. I might cover a few things that Phil's already covered over again, so I apologize for the repetition, but it'll help. We're here tonight.
Can't hear you. Can you?
Is the micro? Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
All right. Good. The reason we're here tonight, obviously, is for rezoning and to amend the future land use map. That is the one key component that we have to do before we can really proceed to the other actions we would have to take to make this project a reality. But it's a critical one, and we can't justify spending the money on this property if we can't get it rezoned and start down the path of building our vision. The first slide I have up here on the screen shows a little bit about site selection, and I'm sure it's not going to be any surprise to any of you why we like this particular location. The Ford property is centrally located in Farragut. There's a great customer base, all of you living all around it. What else makes it attractive is the fact that you can get access to the store fairly easily from farther reach via the highway and some of the state highways around the area. And we're also near a lot of complementary businesses. One thing that we've learned over the years, especially me doing this for the past 17 years, is that when we come into town, not just us, any other business comes into town, what happens is you get a halo effect around the new business. Everybody has to up their game, as Phil said. The competition increases for labor, so labor wages rise. Prices go down. You have to compete for better pricing. Service and selection improve. You have to compete for all those things in order to keep your customers and keep your business afloat. So we feel that this is a great location because of all those reasons, with or without the competition around. Next slide, please. Thanks. I wanted to give you a little background on what we've done so far with the community to get their input and make sure that those elements that are important to the town get into this concept. So the first meeting we had was way back in March. We met with the town staff, and we just introduced Hy-Vee at that point with no real preconceived notions of what would go on the Ford property. Obviously, we wanted to put a grocery store there, but other than that, we wanted to hear what the town had in mind for this space and try and design and build around that. So after we heard town staff's comments, we went back and prepared a preliminary schematic master plan, very preliminary. And then we took that back to staff and presented it to them and got more of their feedback on the more built-out schematic master plan. And also got their advice on how to proceed forward. They suggested that we contact the surrounding neighborhoods and HOAs, meet with them, and get their input into this project in this space. So we held an open house on June 16th, and we had about 50 people actually sign the attendance book. I think there were more people than that there. The press was there. It was a busy meeting, and we received an awful lot of input, good ideas, lots of concerns, which we hope we've addressed with our concept plan. After we had that public input meeting, we followed up again with staff just to let them know what we heard, make sure we are hearing right, and get further input from them as well. And then after we received all that information, we revised our schematic master plan. And then with time constraints, we filed for the future land use amendment and the rezoning that we have in front of you this evening. Next slide, please. All right, so I have a couple, 2 paragraphs on this slide. And these are the things that we heard about that were boiled down at our community meetings. Some of the opportunities we heard about the Ford property in this place is find a way to celebrate the history and this place, provide more open space, extend the green space behind Town Hall was a pretty specific one we heard several times, provide pedestrian and bicycle access and paths. One pretty specific comment we received is make sure there's adequate parking, and I think that comes from concerns at the Kroger store where there's apparently not enough parking at times. And then provide future street connections in order to mitigate traffic concerns. We also heard challenges. We received an awful lot of comments, so I've just boiled them down to the basic things that we heard. So obviously the biggest challenge, and the reason we're here tonight, is the existing zoning and the future land use. I don't think I need to elaborate on that. Traffic impacts. As every community that we go to tells us, traffic is a concern. And any commercial development on this property, regardless of whether it's a mixed-use town center, just your standard mid-size to big box stores, to just your regular single tenant type of places like an automotive shop or something like that, those are all going to bring in additional traffic. They're going to all have traffic impacts. Light, trash, and noise is a concern we heard. We believe our concept mitigates a lot of those concerns. We've already talked about competition for customers and labor, and there's concern about additional commercialization of Farragut. And so we've talked about that. Just wanted to make sure that you understand that we've heard these concerns and we've heard these opportunities. Next slide, please. So after all that massaging, this is the concept that we bring before you. I like to say this is a master plan. That means it doesn't mean it's a baked solid, but it is a guiding document for how we want to develop this property. And some of the development objectives that we've placed, which line up with the town center mixed-use development objectives, are: one, create a sense of place. We understand, based on what we've heard, is that providing an entry point and creating that sense that you've arrived somewhere along Kingston Pike is extremely important. And so what we've shown are some basic blocking diagrams out on Kingston Pike in this concept, but there's a lot of green space around that, and those are areas where there's lots of opportunities to do something unique and interesting, to provide space, to provide structure, to provide volume and mass in that space. It's not designed at this point, it's just being reserved for that. As you get farther in, obviously you have our proposed store. I'll argue that with the mixed-use town center, the last one that actually made it to the Board of Aldermen had 184,000 square feet of retail space in it, and another 140,000 plus square feet of office, and that was just packed in the first 27 acres of this site. So it was a much denser, higher intense use. I will argue that inside this 156,000 square foot box, you'll find all the different uses, services, products that you would have found in a mixed-use town center. The difference being it's all under one roof, and it's all up closer to the road, and it's easier access to parking. Another thing we heard is the green space. Loud and clear, we heard that the town wants more green space. So what we're proposing to do is dedicate a substantial portion of this property for a public park to the town of Farragut, excuse me. On this concept, that represents approximately 8 acres, and that's not counting the green space that would be inside all these individual lots that you see on here. Pedestrian connections, you can see a lot of white lines on here. Those are all purposely designed trails. They don't have to take on that form in particular, but that is how we envision that space being developed. It can look differently. That would be up to the town of Farragut to decide how that looks. But between all the roads and with all the roads, all of them have sidewalks, and then you also have all these trails and connection points through the green space to the surrounding neighborhoods and to Kingston Pike. And that goes also to the pedestrian-friendly streets. And last but not least, something that was talked about quite a bit on the last item is consistency between uses. Our commercial portion of this project, our store, and the businesses that would develop up on Kingston Pike are similar to the surrounding, either to the east or west of this site. And then the residential that's in orange matches up identically to the development that is to the east. The blocks that are shown in the yellow line up identically to the development that's to the west. Next slide. All right, so one of the concerns that everybody had is the traffic impacts. So I'm going to try and walk you through this as best I can. At Jamestown Parkway and Kingston Pike, we're proposing a signalized intersection. Those drawings have already been done by Mr. Bates. And as part of that, the Coles entrance that's on Kingston Pike would be removed, and they would get a new entrance off of Jamestown Parkway on the inside of the Ford property. That has already been codified through a plat agreement as well. Municipal Center Drive, I noted it up there, would connect near the post office and near the area where it ends, just outside the building here, and then go around the outside of the parking lot. That way it stays a public right-of-way, and it separates the store from the uses towards Kingston Pike as well. And then Jamestown Boulevard is the long line that goes north to south and then sweeps up to the east. We're proposing that connection be made in the future, so we would provide the means to make that possible, so that when the parcels to the east develop, Jamestown Boulevard can connect over to Campbell Station. And then last but not least, we were asked to try and find a way to connect Red Mill Road into Jamestown Parkway, and that would be to the far south of the site. So that's transportation. Next slide, please. This diagram shows how we intend to codify and solidify this concept so that it can't be changed real easily. There's blocks in here that could be modified by individual developers, but the major portion of it would be developed by us on the front end. All the areas that you see with the red boundary and the peach colors, those would be dedicated as public right-of-way to the town of Farragut. And the areas that are all light green would also be dedicated to the town of Farragut as park space. Once those dedications are made and those are platted, it's really hard to change it from that point. And then we can also further manage the future development of the space behind the store using pattern books, design guidelines, design standards. We've done it before. We can do it again. Next slide, please. This, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. This is just a store that we've recently completed in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. You can see it's not a big, quote, box. It's got a lot of articulation on the front, both vertical and horizontal, to create different spaces. It's got multiple entrances. It has lots of glass, so you can see in the space. It has different departments with separate doors to each department, so it feels a lot like you're at different businesses along a street front. Next slide, please. This is the last slide, and I'll get out of the way here. So we believe that what we've created here meets all the stated goals of the town center district. We believe we've created a sense of place. We've created open public spaces and open spaces. We're proposing lots of pedestrian connections. We're proposing pedestrian-friendly streets. And we are definitely being consistent with the surrounding land uses. Another thing to keep in mind, and Phil already talked about this quite a bit, is we are an employee-owned company, and we have a business model that's based on autonomy. So when the store is actually built, the store has the flexibility and the authority to make all their decisions locally. So they can make all their hiring decisions, they can make all their wage decisions, they can set their prices, they can do their promotions, they can partner with the local government, produce local producers, businesses, nonprofits, charities. And we typically do that with all of those sectors of the local economy. We get involved with everything: Boys and Girls Clubs, Boy Scouts, schools. The local government will partner up and do projects together. It's just something that's just ingrained in the blood of Hy-Vee. The other thing is innovation. We take risks. We implement a lot of new technologies. So if we get through this process, this store would have electric vehicle charging stations, probably have solar panels on the roof to offset electrical usage. We have one store that's LEED Platinum, another store that's LEED Gold, and several others that are LEED certified, and we've used all the lessons learned on those LEED projects, and we've baked the sustainability ideas that we learned from those projects into all of our stores. So a lot of the things you'll find are refrigeration that actually recycles heat and uses it to preheat water for dishwashers, etc. Concrete floors with lithium baked into them so they're hard and they don't absorb odors and liquids. LED lighting, skylights with dimmable LED lightings. I could go on and on. We do a lot of innovative things on the technology front. We also do a lot of innovative things in the compensation and benefit packages. Our part-timers earn a bonus based on the store's performance. They can get health insurance. We can get pet insurance. We get a 10% discount, dental, health, eye care, cancer insurance. The list goes on and on. And actually, I have the list with me, and I can read it off if you want to hear more. I'll stop there. We also offer tons of careers and job opportunities, both for people who just want a part-time job and want to earn some extra money. And we also have great positions as careers. We have managers of our departments that based on our compensation package, so they earn a base salary and they can earn a commission. They can earn 6 figures running a department at one of our stores. And then last but not least, we'd be another new sales tax source for the community. Thank you.
I have some people that have signed up if you want to. The first one is Jim Bolo? Bolin. Okay, and then after him, Karen Johnson.
I'm Jim Bolin, 12708 Golden Fox Lane in the Fox Run subdivision. So this is my first time speaking to this august body. Unfortunately, the Hy-Vee folks got drew the straw to come on at 4 hours and 15 minutes into the session, so I can see the weariness on your faces. I came here with probably a general feeling that I've heard from other Farragut residents and Fox Run homeowners, and that you see on social media is why in the world do we need a 9th grocery store? And while you want to be deemed a retailer, that you're seen as a grocery store. But and I heard numbers, so being the engineer, I looked at the map, drew a 2-mile radius from this location, and sure enough, I came up with 8 places you can go buy lots of groceries and get gas and so forth. You had the, as I learned tonight, where you had an open house and 50 people showed up. I can tell you that probably not many from the 366 homes in Fox Run showed up. They might have a different view if they've seen some of this on the proposal, but I think you've got a battle in front of you just trying to convince folks to add a 9th grocery store within 2 miles of the area. Certainly, Hy-Vee's put a business case together that says they'll be profitable. Certainly, it benefits the landowners and developers. And who knows what it'll mean for Farragut, but I do have some reservations about adding this in, the nature of it. Nothing against Hy-Vee. Sounds like it's probably a great place to work and maybe a great corporate citizen, but I think it's going to be a challenge, and especially since it appears to be very counter to the overall plan that the town has put together. So, thank you.
And next is Karen Johnson, and after her is Michael Wilson.
My name is Karen Johnson. I reside at 344 Burning Circle, Baldwin Park. First and foremost, I just want to thank the Planning Commission, all of you before us this evening, putting in long hours for making Farragut a most vibrant and livable community that I've ever lived in, and I'm just really proud every day. I enjoy the community center and just McPhee Park. I'm just am just thrilled to be a resident, and I thank my fellow residents for all their input and their dedication to meeting our common goals. I strongly recommend our planning commission. I strongly recommend our planning commission's approval of the Hy-Vee request to amend the future land use map to commercial, parks and recreation, low-density residential, and very low-density residential for the Eddie Ford property as depicted on the proposed future land use map. Behind the commercial zone, as was depicted on the concept plan, Hy-Vee is requesting a 7-acre area for open space park zone, which would prioritize the walkability and connect gathering spaces. It includes a formal neighborhood green space, an informal neighborhood green space, also a amphitheater outdoors. It's going to incorporate the repurposed Ford barn, and there's also going to be neighborhood walkways that connect. So all of these green spaces are in close proximity to our existing town hall, our playground, and it kind of creates a really expanded town center atmosphere. So I think it ties in with what we've done for a number of years, trying to develop our town center. My husband and I were originally from the Midwest, and we have had quite a bit of good shopping experiences at Hy-Vee stores, and they're full service. One thing I would stress is their emphasis on superior customer service. Their slogan is a helpful smile in every aisle, and I would just say that's something you'd have to smile about and just try to imagine. So you can tell that I'm a little tired. It's past my bedtime. But anyway, I'll keep on going. We're like was mentioned, it's an employee-owned company. It started in 1930, and I just think it would be a tremendous sales tax generator for our community. I think we're going to be on the hook for about $7 million for the I-40, I-75, Campbell Station interchange, and it would help to have some sales tax generation for our town. It'll also create jobs, and it'll bring some competitive pricing for us consumers. But the reason why I really wanted to speak to the Planning Commission is the key advantage of the Hy-Vee project is the roadway network improvements in the vicinity with a cost share coming directly from Hy-Vee. In other words, it's my understanding that Hy-Vee would help fund some of the network improvements.
30 seconds left. 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Okay. Currently, we have two adjacent markedly short left turn lanes on Kingston Pike. One goes to Jamestown Boulevard. The other one goes into Kohl's Shopping Center. And it really creates a road hazard. And I would say that a head-on collision's about ready to happen any day when I go using that interchange. But anyway, it creates a danger zone, and I think that the Hy-Vee's proposal to have Jamestown Boulevard realigned across Kingston Pike with the traffic signal and extended along the south side of the Ford property would really help rectify that danger zone. And also having the Kohl's entrance removed from Kingston Pike and relocated off the Jamestown extension. So anyway, I think that the whole...
That's the time.
The time is up.
Expired.
Okay,
yep.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next is Michael Wilson, and after him is Jeannie Brukowski.
Good evening again. Michael Wilson, 412 Eisenhower Street in Farragut, Tennessee. I want to speak more, not so much to Hy-Vee on this item, but more to the property itself, the Ford property. So it seems the fundamental question on this agenda item is, should this property remain within the mixed-use town center overlay? If the answer to that is yes, then the developer's proposal is not compatible with the mixed-use town center portion of the C1 zoning ordinance, and it can't be approved. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. But back to that original question, should this property remain within the mixed-use town center? I think as a community we need to evaluate both of our options, the Hy-Vee and then what's presently zoned on that property. So back in late 2020, early 2021, there was a discussion regarding the mixed-use town development, the mixed-use town center development plans envisioned in the 2012 Comprehensive Land Use Plan that we've all heard so much about tonight. Town officials advised that they had gone to a conference in Las Vegas and addressed those plans with several developers. They were told that in order for them to come to fruition, there would need to be a multi-level parking garage in order to support our town center development. This was part of the reasoning for changing the C1 zoning ordinance to allow the freestanding apartments on Biddle Farm. As a previous discussion was held regarding apartments on this property, the Ford property, that was soundly opposed last year. And changes to the ordinance do not allow apartments on this property within the mixed-use town center. So here's some questions I think we need to think about. As a planning commission, if you desire to keep this property under the mixed-use town center overlay, are you willing to commit to building a multi-level parking garage on this property if requested by a future developer? That's what the town said 2 years ago would be needed in order to support a town center type development. Would the parking garage decision go to the Board of Zoning Appeals versus the FMPC and BOMA as a special exception request as discussed in paragraph F.2 of the C1 zoning ordinance? I think it probably would, because parking garages, and Mark, I may be wrong, but parking garages are not listed in the mixed-use town center portion of the ordinance, and the ordinance gives that permission or that granting authority to the Board of Zoning Appeals. I could be wrong because parking may be different, but I think it would. For the residents of Glen Abbey and Park Place, would you prefer a larger development of commercial, office, and residential buildings along with a potential multi-level parking garage over the proposed development? To me, it seems troubling if the town retains this property as mixed-use town center, but has no desire to approve the noted garage that they've been told is needed to support the town center development. While it would be preferable to address these land use issues without a pending request, I think now is the time to discuss not only this proposal, but the other types of potential development that could happen under current zoning. Having dozens of businesses, offices, and a parking garage might create more issues than this development. Thank you.
Where's he getting this damn parking garage?
Okay, Jeannie Bukowski, and then after her is Mary Ellen Brannon.
My name is Jeannie Brachalski. I'm a member of the Farragut Neighborhood Preservation Partnership. Several of us are here tonight. I live on Crestview Road in Bel Air. Now, Hy-Vee wants to build a 156,000 square foot grocery store with a convenience store and gas pumps in the middle of a residential area, which is not compatible with the current land use plan, which protects residential neighborhoods from incompatible development. Nor is it compatible with that area of Kingston Pike, much less the neighborhoods and families who live there. To help visualize the size of the Hy-Vee store, picture Costco, which is 146,000 square feet. Hy-Vee would be even bigger. For those of us who live in the neighborhoods adjacent to and near the Ford property, we deal with extremely heavy traffic and difficulty getting in and out of our neighborhoods daily. This would make it worse. At the staff developer meeting October 4th, the Hy-Vee representatives confirmed again that they want to buy the entire acreage and that they will be selling the property they do not need. They only need about 20 of the 68.31 acres. Hy-Vee said they would not be involved in developing anything beyond the back of their store. They may have a vision, but they will not have final control. They would have to find a willing partner. This is a very uncomfortable and distressing unknown. If the zoning and the comprehensive land use plan is changed for Hy-Vee, whoever buys that property can do whatever they want as long as it meets the requirements of the changed zoning. The small parcel Hy-Vee said they want to donate for a park, they stated that they would not pay for or manage it. That would be on the town of Farragut. If you go west from where Jamestown Boulevard and Village Green intersects with Kingston Pike across from the Ford property where Hy-Vee wants to build their store, to the traffic light at Kingsgate, it's less than 1 mile. It's 0.9 miles. Heading west, there are 12 curb cuts on the left-hand side of Kingston Pike, 7 curb cuts on the right side of Kingston Pike. These curb cuts include several businesses, shopping centers, and residential neighborhoods. Per the town of Farragut, Hy-Vee would need to do a traffic impact study before a site plan would be approved. In order to be accurate and honest, the study would need to be during the school year, during regular school and business hours. Hy-Vee's concept plan calls for the municipal center drive to kind of zigzag around their store from behind Kohl's to the post office and connect with the proposed Jamestown Boulevard access to the Kingston Pike at the Ford property. It would not run straight across the property and would not be walkable. Would this not also be a safety issue? The back of the Hy-Vee grocery store and the loading dock would back up to several Glen Abbey homes and be near many more. Semi-trucks delivering inventory, being unloaded, etc., would create a great deal of noise and gas fumes. Then there would be the dumpsters, where food would be discarded, which of course will attract rats and other scavengers, and then be hauled away by the large and loud waste trucks. The residents of Farragut need to know the impact this project would have on existing businesses, small specialty businesses, and residential neighborhoods. Mark, can you key up that? Thank you. At the staff developer meeting, October 4th, the Hy-Vee representatives tried to counter the concern of high car traffic by saying there is really no difference between the traffic a 156,000 square foot grocery store would generate than a series of smaller boutiques, coffee shops, office suites, and doctor's offices. Example up there kind of shows, yeah, it is a big difference. The huge difference is in traffic flow 7 days a week.
You have 30 seconds.
7 days a week for a grocery store with constant delivery trucks and then businesses of a small footprint with limited operating hours. In addition to the noise and safety issues, there are concerns of quality of life. We move to neighborhoods, not commercial developments. We want to live next to homes and families, not parking lots, big box stores, and gas stations. Hy-Vee seems like a nice store. I just don't want it less than a mile from my house or next to or near any other Farragut residence' home. Thank you.
Mary Ellen Brannon, and after her is Jillian Lindsay.
Thank you. My name is Mary Ellen Brannon. I live at 212 Battery Hill Circle, which is in Farragut Crossing. And I think it's pretty obvious tonight. One thing I think we can all agree on is that we're all pretty passionate about Farragut and its future. I believe that the majority of our residents don't want to see Farragut turn into another over-commercialized, asphalt-covered, carbon-copied community indistinguishable from every other Knoxville area community. I believe we want to have attractive neighborhoods with compatible amenities, compatible in terms of scale and location, without the height, traffic, overcrowding, and unappealing features of other communities. The current zoning and future land use plan were the result of Farragut residents working together and providing input to create a vision of what Farragut should be. Ask yourself, would changing the land use plan or the current zoning enhance Farragut? Would it move Farragut forward in any way? I think not. What it will do is destroy the surrounding neighborhoods and disrupt our entire community. We don't want Farragut to become known as a destination for mega shopping. Leave that to places like Turkey Creek or the nearest Buc-ee's. If this happens, we will lose our Farragut. Please, please, we're asking you not to change the zoning or the land use plan. Thank you.
Last speaker was Gillian Lindsay.
Good night again, everyone. Jillian Lindsay, 734 Andover Boulevard, Andover Place. This Mr. asked the question why we need another supermarket. We don't. We have enough. We have 9 supermarkets very close by. We don't need the traffic. We don't need commercial coming in our family. We made investments as residents, as passionate Tennesseans in our area. We love our area. My family, we just came from a trip from Denver. We don't want Denver here. We can go to it. So I would not recommend the growth of those states in Tennessee. And this is for the board. A lot of outsiders is coming in and wanting to develop, which is fine. Growth is good, but there could be good growth, there could be bad growth. Where is Farragut? Where is Knoxville in 10, 15, 20 years? Are we next Chicago? Are we next Colorado? Denver? Are we next New York? Are we next Atlanta? So the growth and everything that is put in now needs to be seriously evaluated in the growth that is going on here. I've seen it. I'm a seasoned traveler. And I can say passionately, I moved to Tennessee over 20 years ago and love it. I've never seen a southerner move north. I've always seen northerners move south. So when you guys come here, where do we go? That's a question for you guys.
Okay, and then Adam Atherton.
Good evening, almost good morning. I appreciate the meeting tonight. Adam Atherton, 801 Andover, in beautiful town Farragut. I support the Hy-Vee proposal at Ford property location. Here are some things to consider. One, while town of Farragut has a healthy balance sheet and reserves, it also has expensive projects on the must-have list, such as Campbell Station, I-40 changes, and the traffic management system. Offices, apartments, dentist offices don't bring tax money to Farragut. Retail does. The Hy-Vee proposal on the Ford property can help fund these infrastructure projects in a big way. Two, Hy-Vee has already figured out that Farragut's a special place. Hy-Vee has 285 retail stores across the U.S., rakes in $12 billion annually. Hy-Vee has big plans for the region around Tennessee. They're building their third distribution facility in Nashville. The other two are in Iowa. Hy-Vee Farragut would be one of three mega stores of 150,000 square feet. The other two are in Zionsville and Louisville, Kentucky, both great places. Three, Hy-Vee's ranked on Forbes' list for largest privately owned companies, consistently ranks among customers' favorite grocery stores, has heavy community involvement, and provides employees a stake in the company. They would be a heavy hitter like Topgolf. Hy-Vee, Costco, and Trader Joe's intentionally draw from a wide area, which is why there are relatively few stores. In contrast, Publix has 1,300 stores, Kroger's has 3,200, and they're merging with Albertsons and doubling in size. This would include shoppers from Knox, Loudoun, Blount, Anderson, and Roane counties. Grocery tourism is tourism. Keep in mind, Hy-Vee offers much more than groceries. Hy-Vee will be a big draw. Hy-Vee Farragut will have car charging stations. The other two in Knoxville are outside of Farragut. Among other things, drivers shop while their electric cars are charging. I asked a buddy who has a Tesla how much time he normally spends when he's traveling. About 40 minutes of time waiting for charging. So that's just an N of one, but interesting stat. 6, Hy-Vee proposal helps meet strategic goals in the town of Farragut, CLUP and FLUP. Strategy 1 is to build out a downtown. Ford property is consistently included in a wider area for downtown. Strategy 4 is to increase connectivity. The proposal would connect Municipal Center Drive to Kingston Pike and Jamestown, as well as connecting interior roads to existing ones in neighboring areas. Strategy 8 is developing remaining parcels consistent with plans. 7, neighboring commercial properties also have large amount of floor space under one roof. Kohl's and neighboring buildings, the contiguous buildings, that's about 100,000 square feet right next door. Across the street, the sprawling Fresh Market buildings cover 140,000 square feet. This is within a couple hundred feet. The Hy-Vee building would be large at 150,000 square feet, but would fit with buildings right next door and across the street. The proposed housing density behind Hy-Vee is similar to Glen Abbey on one side and Park Place on the other, and that goes for both the original proposal and the new one. 9, the development of the Ford property would present the opportunity to improve Jamestown, providing some relief to the Kingston Pike Campbell Station congestion. 10, Hy-Vee proposal includes extensive landscape walking paths and a small park. Walkability is highly desired, as we know, in any community, including Farragut, because it fosters a healthy lifestyle. 11, finally, Eddie Ford volunteered his time and abilities for 24 years to development of Farragut. His property has been in downtown conversation for years, and this is reflected in the Clup and Flup. Hy-Vee's proposal on Eddie's property is consistent with Town of Farragut plans and presently developed properties nearby. Eddie has earned goodwill, and to Ed's point earlier, we really should consider what the owner wants. It is time for Town of Farragut to reverse the decision to put an overly restrictive zoning on his property and let him develop the property as he wishes. This benefits Farragut too. I support removing the overlay consistent with Hy-Vee's request. Hy-Vee would be value added to our community. Thank you. That wasn't as loud as the other.
So, Mark, I need to.
I think she wanted to speak real quick.
My name is Judy Bloodworth. I live in 517 Banbury. I come to this meeting in a kind of a unique position. I was a former member of a planning commission, and I was a retail buyer for a lot of years, working for Meijer as for one of the chains. So I'm pretty familiar with the concept that Hy-Vee is attempting to bring in. But I'm going to speak to only one aspect of this as a question, which is on the plan where we're talking about the Jamestown Parkway. If you sell that property behind you, are you completing the parkway all the way through, or is that for the person who's going to purchase the property to finish all the way back to the future connection to Campbell Station? That would be the question to the gentleman. I don't know. That's my only question for today.
Yeah, the completion would be part of a phase 2 as the residential portion was built out.
By others.
But I thought you were selling that piece to the developer.
Correct. So we'd be dedicating the right-of-way for the roadways. So we'd be building the portion basically from Kingston Pike to the portion you see that's contiguous to our store. So those other 2 connections to the west could be made. But any of that connection behind our store to the south would be part of phase 2 as that residential portion was put in.
Is that all public input?
That's all the people that signed up, yes.
Can I give you guys a little bit extra background? Because I did, in all the non-traditional research I do, I came across the Farragut 2000 plan, and in reading it, came across some stuff that might interest us. So it's a vision document it was approved in 1991. I think it was one of the first major planning efforts that we had done, formal planning efforts. And it was approved unanimously, adopted by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen on February 28, 1991. It identifies a variety of areas of emphasis, one of which was economic and private development. And in it lists one of the community goals was commercial development can be tastefully and intelligently integrated into a residential environment. Mixed-use developments consisting of commercial, office, and residential uses combined into an attractive functional plan are especially desirable. It highlighted 5 areas where they thought commercial development should take place. One of them was Kingston Pike, limited to areas presently zoned commercial, and a largely undeveloped area behind and south of Brooklawn Square. It had 15 recommendations. There's 3 that are pertinent to what we're dealing with tonight. To maintain a high quality of life as the community continues to develop, the following recommendations should be implemented. I'm sorry. Promote well-planned mixed-use developments that allow a blend of various compatible land uses. If necessary, the current zoning ordinance should be amended in order to encourage this type of development. Number 11, make appropriate changes to the town regulations to remove any barriers to mixed-use developments. And number 15, encourage public and private development of mixed-use sites. 2 sites are of particular importance. One was the Fort Loudon Lake waterfront area. The other was the second site, borders the creek south of Kingston Pike. These sites are especially suitable for the development of festive shopping areas. Several other properties could be involved in the realization of such plans. It will take coordinated agreement between all parties to design a feasible plan. Such plans should be integrated with the major road plan, future land use plan, town hydrology plan, and long-term economic development strategy. So, in other words, mixed use in the town of Farragut has its roots in a plan adopted in 1991, which is more than 30 years ago. So I think that's something to think about, as we have always been very forward-thinking in our planning. I will say this just for clarity. Yes, we have a $8.75 million price tag that goes along with the interchange in I-40/75. This is all we're doing is reprioritizing our CIP. This is what we do every year. We prioritize the projects that we want to do. This one, the price tag came in after we adopted our budget. Had we known this in April, this wouldn't even be a discussion, because we would have reprioritized our CIP projects at that point and gone along with our day. But this is a priority to get this project done. So the town of Farragut does have operates with a surplus every year and has a healthy fund balance. We are debt-free and have been debt-free since 2001. We pay as we go. We do not collect a property tax, and we preserve our way of thriving without a property tax. We conduct ourselves in an extremely fiscally conservative manner. So that's not a concern to me, and I'm just going to make my points and then I'll just be done. We are first and foremost a high-quality residential community. That's why we were founded. We wanted to protect the high-quality residential community that we are. Secondary to that, we were going to live without a property tax. But to compromise our desire to build a sense of place that emanates from a pedestrian-oriented town center just to generate additional sales tax revenue, I believe, would be short-sighted. So I do not support removing the mixed-use town center overlay from the
Mark, do we need to, do I need to read number 7 in?
Anybody else have any comments on this one?
I will say one thing if we're going to do number 7, and I don't know that do you need to read it in?
Yeah, I mean, I can show you the zoning change that's requested if you want.
Okay.
Just quickly.
Discussion on a request to amend the Farragut municipal zoning map for 11,500 Kingston Pike, 68.31 acres from C-1, O-1, B-1, and R-1 to C-1, OS, R-4, and R-3, John Brigham, Hy-Vee applicant. And again, these two were for discussion only tonight.
And this is the zoning map. This is where the requirements are embedded. And the top image is what the property is currently zoned. You've got about 12 acres that's zoned commercial south of Kingston Pike, and then you go to office. There's a small section of buffer just before you get into kind of the back side of Park Place, north end of Park Place subdivision to the east, and then the rest of the property is zoned rural residential right now. So that's what you can do with the property. The C1 part is also tied to those additional design requirements that I talked about that are specific to the mixed-use town center land use area, dealing with the smaller footprint and the more pedestrian type, look and feel. of the development. The lower image is what the applicant is requesting. It would provide for the zoning necessary, assuming that the future land use map were changed, because that would have to change in order to have this project come to fruition. So the lower image shows C1. It's expanding from roughly 12 acres to about 21 acres. And then to the south of that is the open space area that they alluded to, possibly donating to the town. Then there's an R4 section, and R4 is what Park Place is zoned. And then there's, to the very south, an R3 zoning district shown. And that's what Glen Abbey is currently zoned. That's small lot, single family residential. As I mentioned too a little bit on the future land use map discussion, I always say be careful about paying a lot of attention to concept plans or what somebody says that they're going to do. And they may very well do what they say, but you really need to look at that map and look at the surrounding context, guided by what your vision is based on their plan and the map associated with the plan, at least currently, unless it needs to be amended, to give you guidance on whether or not these requested changes are appropriate to the context. Because once that C1 part, if the mixed-use town center goes away, those development requirements are gone. Property zone C1, if Hy-Vee doesn't come in, somebody else could do something that may not be as lofty. So, you've got to think about that. And in these other areas that are maybe not part of Hy-Vee's development, that are residential or open space, again, that's something that you need to carefully think about. What happens with those, no matter what the concept is or who the applicants are or property owners are. So that's the only thing I would caution. Similar to the future land use map, these are changes that to the staff are pretty significant, and I think the community really does need to substantially weigh in on what their vision is for this property and the larger area, and what changes to this property could result in other parts of our mixed-use town center potentially. It's a very important consideration. So I'll not say any more because it's extremely late, but I did want to make those points.
Can I make additional points to that? Park Place and Glen Abbey are designated inaccurately on the future land use map. Park Place has a density of 2.96 units per acre, and Glen Abbey has a density of 2.79 units per acre. Both neighborhoods should be designated very low density residential on the land use map, which calls into question how the undeveloped property not designated MUT is currently designated. At some point, the community needs to weigh in on that as well. I will state this, that what you're saying about, I could not support rezoning any of the office zoned property to provide for more additional commercial property, because now it becomes an issue of the threat of incompatible development next to existing low-density residential neighborhood. And that's all I got to say.
Else?
If we zone C1, from what I'm reading here, it would allow sales of lawn and farm equipment, automotive services, probably more tire stores.
Anything that's permitted in the C1. Yes.
I think it's incompatible with our plan.
They'd have to pull the overlay to do any of that, though.
Yeah, they'd have to change the mixed-use town center land use.
But you also still have commercial on the front end.
Then you get rid of those development requirements that are specific to that land use in C1. But if they did that and rezoned it C1, then yes, you're right.
It was interesting read.
Anybody else have any thoughts or comments? Or
Anybody else have any comments or questions?
It's interesting.
Yeah, Michael.
We have people, I wanted to make a comment on this item. So.
I couldn't remember what our names were.
Okay. I didn't have anybody signed up for this one, but. Oh, you did on 8 as well?
Are we talking citizens forum here?
No, this is for item 7.
Oh, still, okay.
So again, Michael Wilson, 412 Eisenhower Street, Farragut. I think we should be cognizant that this discussion is not about the Hy-Vee development versus the current open farmland. This area could be developed as it's currently zoned. That request would be much more difficult to disapprove. Hy-Vee's request should be compared to what could be developed under the current zoning. And thanks, Mark, for putting up page 51. As seen on page 51, the current commercial and office space zoning has a larger impact on Glen Abbey and Park Place than Hy-Vee's proposed rezoning. Under the current zoning, the commercial and office development would abut approximately 9 homes on the east side of English Station Drive. Under Hy-Vee's rezoning request, this number would be reduced to 4 to 5 homes. That's a 44 to 55% decrease. As well, you can clearly see the proposed open space or park provides a much greater buffer with Park Place. Next, I want to discuss the residential area. The proposed residential densities are between 2.2 and 2.9 units per acre. The main difference between these two is their form. These densities and forms seem compatible with both Park Place and Glen Abbey. Hy-Vee's use of the open space on the western boundary provides an additional protection and pedestrian enhancements for local residents. This protection might not be provided if the land is developed using the current zoning. Remember that parking garage we talked about earlier. The main challenge I see is with the low-density residential or R4 portion of the development. As you know, R4 has a density of 3 to 6 units per acre. To me, it makes more sense to rezone the entire residential portion as very low density, allowing 2 to 4 units per acre. Actual density would probably need to be about 2.4, 2.5 units per acre to get the approximate 100 homes Hy-Vee has planned or identified. The park and buffer space on the western boundary is a substantial improvement that would warrant increasing the base density by 0.4 or 0.5 units per acre. This compromise would ensure the density remains compatible with both existing neighborhoods and still conforms to Hy-Vee's plan. As mentioned earlier, Hy-Vee's development does address several strategies from the comprehensive land use plan. The first is strategy 4, increased connectivity. Alignment of the site entrance to Jamestown Boulevard supports the town's desire to use this road as a bypass for North Campbell Station and the Kingston Pike intersection to address current traffic issues. The connection of the Municipal Center Drive would allow Glen Abbey residents to get to South Campbell Station without having to travel on Kingston Pike. The future road connection would provide additional connectivity to other areas of the town center, such as Biddle Farm. The new walking trails and sidewalks would provide pedestrian connections, increasing walkability in the area. These would be safer as they move pedestrian traffic away from Kingston Pike. Finally, the placement of the park next to Town Hall could allow us to capitalize on our Heritage Strategy 5. I recommend naming it Battle at Campbell Station Park. This would allow an opportunity to tie this space to the Campbell Station Inn, giving us an opportunity to highlight our history. The Biddle Farm Town Center needed apartments to make the project viable. The last developer interested in building a town center here advised he would need apartments to financially support a town center type development. Other developers have said it would take a multi-level parking garage. I don't believe anyone in this room wants any of those things. While a walkable town center is preferred, it simply might not be financially feasible on this property due to the price of the land. Hy-Vee's request is not perfect, but it does offer several positives for the town and should not be rejected out of hand. And one thing I see with all of these comments is people have concerns about how this would be developed, particularly the back end. Consider a planned commercial development district on this property, because then these folks would have to find a developer, bring them in, and have a completed site plan and everything before it's rezoned. So that may be a concept that the developer and the town could come onto agreement with. Thank you.
Okay, and I think the last speaker was Gene Burkowski.
First, I have a quick question. Is the top the current zoning?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought. Okay. So the new zoning would reduce residential property, it looks like. And, of course, it increases commercial. First, I want to emphasize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. First, I want to emphasize Hy-Vee and a couple of people on have mentioned Park Place and Glen Abbey as being the subdivisions, the neighborhoods affected. On that same stretch of road is also Derby Chase. Right there at the entrance to the road, Glen Abbey Road, is also Shiloh. Right next to Shiloh is Bel Air. You go down just past a little ways, there's Farragut Crossing. And of course, there's also Village Green on the other side of the street. You go a little bit farther down, there's Linda Heights. And then you go farther down, there's Kingsgate. On the other side at Mooring Road, there's subdivisions up there. The point I'm making, as I mentioned earlier, there's 12 curb cuts on one side and 7 on the other. On the one side, the side that Hy-Vee will be on, Glen Abbey, Derby Chase, Shiloh, Bel Air, and Farragut Crossing, and Linda Heights. Park Place doesn't. These ones only are these subdivisions only have one way in and out on Kingston Pike, and we already have a horrible time, and there have already been wrecks because there are so many curb cuts so close together, and now 156,000 square foot building. That is mayhem waiting to happen, and also there's been comments made about weighing the owner of the property concerns and what they want over a few subdivisions. Well, a few subdivisions, Glen Abbey has over 350 homes in there. Oh, okay, I thought it was, okay. But anyway, there's some, Park Place has several. Village Green probably, nobody has probably can even count them at this point. There's so many. There's 60 homes in Bel Air. How many are in Farragut Crossing, Mary? 300. Only 300. Okay. So does the number of people who live in the area who don't own $1 million properties that we can sell to live on the rest of our lives, is it fair to us to have our property values go down, to have our quality of life impacted negatively? Doesn't each and every one of us deserve some consideration? And I want to say thank you to Louise and to those that have asked questions and mentioned about preserving neighborhoods and residential sovereignty in Farragut, because after all, as it was said earlier, that was a big part of the reason Farragut was founded. And I was around then, I remember. So anyway, thank you again for y'all's time, and thank you for being so supportive and open to residential comments and residential support. Thank you.
Item number 8, approval of utilities.
Did not have any.
Okay, and number 9, citizens forum.
Do not have anyone.
Okay, in that case, the October 20th, 2022 meeting of the Farragut Municipal Planning Commission.
30 seconds, hurry.